In this video, I'm going to be presenting a, a rebuttal or a counter view to Bryan Alexander's video that he recently posted talking about how generative AI might die, right? So this is sort of a different viewpoint. I've talked to Bryan Alexander about this. He's somewhat of a mentor of mine. So I wanted to reach out to him and say, hey, I have very different viewpoints on this. Is it okay if I make a rebuttal type video so that we can have a discussion about this? And he was all for it. And why was he all for it? Of course he was all for it because he understands the importance of us having these type of discussions, the importance of us to look at different viewpoints, look at different thoughts and ideas. So the thought here is that we're going to continue this conversation so that we can look at things from multiple perspectives, so that we can have this sort of community of sharing, community of inquiry, like I'm always trying to develop on this channel, so that we can discuss these sort of things in a friendly environment where there's no yelling, there's no accusations or anything crazy like that. There's simply discovery. There's simply investigation and looking at things from different perspectives. So that's the idea here. So I hope that I'll be able to provide some really interesting information so that we can continue to look at this, because this is all part of AI literacy development, which is something that we all need. So we need to be looking at things from a realistic viewpoint, which I'm hoping to provide with this video. All right, so the very first part here talks about the first point that Bryan Alexander makes. He's talking about a business model. So he states that, hey, AI doesn't really have a business model, and Microsoft has invested so much into OpenAI. How are they ever going to make that back? It's very expensive to run something like OpenAI, constantly causing lots of outflow of money. Are they even able to make money back? So here's the information I found about that. Here's an article from The Guardian that talks about the very heavy bet, as they put it, that Microsoft put into OpenAI, where they've invested billions and billions into OpenAI, but are they making any money back? The main part of this article is that, yes, it beat expectations, so it has made the money back. In fact, here's the quote. Azure Cloud, that's Microsoft, computing business saw the pace of deals worth 100 million and 10 million increase by double-digit percentages. It has also started selling its Copilot AI software add-ons to small businesses. Total revenue at Microsoft increased 17% to 61.86 billion during the first 3 months of 2024. The third quarter of its financial year surpassing analyst expectations of some 60.88 billion. Earnings per share increased 20% to 2.94 ahead of the expected 2.83. So yes, it definitely made up some money there, right? So the idea here is that this is investment that it's going to make Microsoft that much more competitive. So you have to think about this on a multiple of levels. One, yes, they're going to make money back simply by increasing these different opportunities that they can offer other businesses, the different way that they can offer different types of services. But more importantly, they also have to make sure that they are continuing to keep market share, right? Because you're going to have competitors that are come out with AI in different ways. So they have to make sure that they're still competing, that they still offer that as well. So that's why it's very important that they did invest in OpenAI. So that's one. But here's another quote. Shares in the firm, Microsoft, have increased by more than 30% over the past year, an impressive rise, although less than the rallies of Amazon and Google, whose stock have risen by more than 60 to 40% respectively. Yes, that's great. You see an increase in revenues for Microsoft, but there's also been an increase in Google and Amazon. Again, those two have also been using AI quite heavily in many different ways. Direct competition from Google with Gemini, but again, more people are using services because of the additional capabilities. But you can see as far as a business model, well, it's proved to be very effective for them because they have made their money and they're continuing to make money. Again, this is a long-term strategy, but this is an important thing to think about in that they are making money. For an additional source of information, this is the New York Times article, again, talking about how Microsoft earnings beat expectations, so it is continuing with strong growth. So that's Microsoft making money off of their investment into OpenAI. But let's keep going with this business model and look at it from multiple perspectives, right? What about OpenAI? Have they been making money? Of course, they got an investment from from Microsoft, but most of that investment comes in being able to use Microsoft services, to being able to use Microsoft's cloud compute and processing powers, right? So we have that, but what about OpenAI actually making money? Well, here's a source. It states that OpenAI's annualized revenue doubled to $3.4 billion since late 2023. That's $3.4 billion that it made in revenue. But that's revenue. What about actual profit, right? Well, that a bit of that is kind of kept under wraps, but you have some speculation that hey, it costs a lot of money to run this, right? You have all sorts of expenditures, and well, there's been a couple different places that have said, oh yeah, it costs at least $700,000 to run OpenAI every day just in compute. Wow, that's a lot. But let's extend that to $1 million. Let's say it costs $1 million every day for OpenAI ChatGPT to function. Well, if we multiply that times 365, that'd be $365 million per year. So let's subtract that from 3.4 billion, and what do we get? So that still leaves us with 3 billion, 35 million. Of course, you'll have to take out a fair amount for the actual people running it, but there's still quite a bit of profit there. But let's take it further. Let's talk about the business model going further. So the question then is, how do we make money? We meaning a business. How do they make money with generative AI? Well, the key thing here, the key phrase in this article is the answer lies in identifying the right generative AI use case and building your capabilities for both developing and operationalizing generative AI applications. Right, so that makes sense that, hey, if I want to use the AI in a way that will help my business, I need to find specific use cases. So for that, we would want to go to actual research, right? Are there any real use cases? And there is. There's several different research articles out there that talk about the benefits of generative AI within business. Here's a quote that says that we see that AI assistance leads to substantial improvements in problem resolution and customer satisfaction for newer and less skilled workers. Other research talking about enhancing work productivity specifically states that its application across sectors like academia, engineering, and communications is revolutionizing how work productivity is increased, from creating compelling advertising to swiftly producing accurate technical reports. So of course, it's all about efficiency. It's all about saving time. Time equals money. There you go. That's business, right? So yeah, there is definitely a use case for generative AI, but it has to be very specific. It's not just this panacea type of thing where, hey, yeah, it solves all my problems. No, we have to start to think about it. Well, how can it be applied properly? Now, that's still in flux. Lots of different companies are looking at different possibilities. I think we're still in that exploration phase, but there's still plenty of businesses that have already incorporated, and there's plenty more that plan to incorporate AI. So I don't see this as sort of a main point to make to say that generative AI is dying, because the business models are out there. Companies are making money, and more companies are finding out how to use this in order to solve different problems, in order to increase efficiencies, increase customer satisfaction, as that last research article talked about. But there's a lot going on. Here's another example. So this comes to us dealing with marketing, how marketers are using generative AI. A whopping 73% of respondents say that their companies are using generative AI to help create text, images, videos, or other content, while just 17% of marketers say that their company isn't. That's a major difference. That's a big change that's happening. So that means that marketers are starting to see the value of using AI to increase their whole production cycle, whether that's to create content as far as using AI to create images or audio or video, or using it just in actual text creation. I use AI all the time to create my images, and it saves me a lot of time. I use AI in many different ways. When I'm creating text, I don't necessarily use AI to create text directly, but I'll ask AI to give me feedback, to help me come up with some ideas, things like that. So more and more companies are starting to use AI in that way, especially with this marketing aspect. Now that survey there, that came from actual marketers, but you have many different small businesses that they can't afford a marketing department, so they have to do all the marketing on their own. And what they're finding is AI is a lifesaver to be able to create high-level content, high-level marketing information, marketing campaigns through simply using AI. Since they can't afford to hire a full-fledged professional, they're using the AI to develop this type of marketing content. So again, lots of business applications for this. And finally, in another article from the Tech Brew, it states that CEO Satya Nadella said Microsoft is following demand cues when it comes to AI spending, which is mostly focused on long-term assets to be monetized over several years. Meta CFO Suzanne Lee had a matching refrain. We don't expect our generative AI products to be a meaningful driver of revenue in 2024, she says. But we do expect that they are going to open up new revenue opportunities over time. So again, when we're talking about a business model, I gave you some examples of current stuff, but a lot of these big time investments are for the long term. So that's why I see that. That's why I don't really agree to the aspect from what Bryan is saying that, hey, this is a real threat right now because there's no business model. I think there is a business model in different ways, but again, not a simple thing that will solve everybody's problems, but there's definitely key ways that AI could be used to help with a lot of different aspects of business. The next part here deals with hallucinations. So this is something that Bryan brought up, which of course is very true, right? Hallucinations, meaning that the AI can produce information that is false, but more importantly, that it can produce it in a confident way. So it makes it somewhat more difficult for us to decide that, hey, that's incorrect information, because it seems like it is correct because it's presented in a confident way. So yeah, that is a true thing, but it's something that we need to look at in an important perspective, right? So it has gone down drastically. It's been going down as far as how much hallucination there is in using AI. Here's an article that talks about how OpenAI is pursuing new ways to fight AI hallucinations. They're looking at different techniques, different possibilities, and of course that would be going to different models as well, meaning that Google as well as other competitors would be looking at different ways to reduce hallucinations. And here's another recent research article that's talking about the ability to detect hallucinations in large language models using semantic entropy and then addressing the issue. So again, there's lots of active stuff going on with that. But I want us to look at this chart, which talks about the leaderboard for hallucination. So here what we can see is the percentage of hallucinations for LLMs. So if we look here, this is a great one because if we look at some of the previous AIs, you can see how there's been huge reductions going down with the release of each LLM. So as the LLMs come out, their capabilities get better and there's a reduction in hallucinations and it keeps going, going, going. Hopefully this will continue. So that's really important. Final part that I want to talk about and offer a rebuttal to, Ryan, is, and again, it's not really a rebuttal, it's more of like a different perspective, right? Is this idea of negative generative AI culture, negative hype. I do see that. I do see that where people want to gravitate to the negative aspects of that. Now, Bryan mentioned a Gallup poll, which was very insightful as well. Bryan provided information on the Gallup poll, simply talking about how, hey, there's more people that don't really trust the AI. But let's look into that Gallup poll a little bit deeper so that we can get some more specifics on what's going on there. So first here, the way that it presents it, I think is a little bit misleading, right? It says few think AI does more good than harm. Okay, so what does that actually mean? So if we look at this chart, again, we can focus on different things. If we look at these percentages, it says that, hey, less than 50%, 40% believe that it does more harm than good. So that means that more than that, 50 to 60% think that it does either more good than harm or does equal amounts harm and good. So no difference or it does better, right? So again, it's the way that we're focusing on this. And there's some interesting statistics here as far as overall, you see that more Asians, Blacks, and Hispanics think that AI does more good than harm, whereas it's only 9% say specifically that it does more good than harm. But again, overall, you can see that the percentages are quite high as far as that it does equal amount harm and good as well as good. So those are overall statistics dealing with how people view it, the trust associated with it. But again, that's one poll, right? There's many different polls, many different surveys out there. Let's look at something else. So here's some results from another research group called Impact Research. They do lots of different polling and different research associated with the sentiments of people. And so they did a survey here looking at a poll of K through 12 teachers, students, parents, and college undergraduates. So in these research findings, we see teacher support way up there, K through 12 student support, favorable, finding it favorable, undergraduates and parents. So there's definitely a high amount of people when we're looking at this type of survey dealing specifically with academia that they find it favorable, meaning that it's going to be supportive for what they're trying to do for teaching and learning. But I also want to, so that's one finding. And again, there's lots of different surveys out there. But I also want to touch on another important factor about this, right? As far as how we're using the AI and what we think about it. So there's this bit of research that's come out that says that 70% of workers using ChatGPT at work are not telling the boss. Overall, usage among professionals has jumps to 43%. So that's a huge number on both accounts, right? It says 43% of professionals are now using it, but then that other number of 70% of workers using ChatGPT don't want to tell their bosses about it. So that sort of begs the question as to why. There's lots of fear about, hey, they haven't told me that I can use it. Is it going to be reprisals? But I think a lot of it also has to do with training, right? They haven't been trained to use it properly, so maybe they're using it improperly. The effectiveness aspects, like, hey, I'm getting a lot of work done. If I tell them that I'm doing all this with ChatGPT or some other AI, maybe they'll give me more work to do, right? Lots of possibilities here. So that's something for us to look at and to investigate. But a clear thing that I want us to see from at least that report, from that survey, is the usage is increasing. There's more and more people using it at work, even if they don't want to say that they're using it. More and more people are using it. They're finding value from it. So even though there might be some negative perception about it, right? The trust issue, we might say that, but then in actual usage, hey, people are using it. And the other thing, as far as usage is concerned, the Gallup poll is talking about trust issues and usage within the United States. What about the rest of the world? Well, there's some differences there too. In this report, we see that willingness to trust and accept AI systems across countries, we find that, hey, the United States is about 40%, right? They're willing to trust it, willing to accept it. But then you look at other countries like South Africa, China, India, it's way over 50%. And in India, it's up to 75%. 75% are willing to trust the AI. So that's pretty powerful as far as trust levels. Remember, it's not just about what's going on in the United States. We have the rest of the world. So there is going to be some differences, but I think it's going to continue to improve based off of utilization. The more that we use it, the more that I think we're going to start to see that, oh yeah, I can use it. And it is going to be something that's effective and that will improve my capabilities overall. But I love the fact that Bryan brought this up as far as trust, because that's something that I'm always pushing for when I teach AI literacy, right? Is this aspect of we should never fully trust the AI. That should never be something that we get into. That should never be something that we push for. Yes, we want our AIs to become better and better. That's for sure. But we can never have this relationship where we just completely trust everything over to the AI. No, there has to be critical thinking that's always involved. So here's another article that talks about this aspect of AI having trust problems, right? This comes from the Harvard Business Review. It's an interesting article. It came out just a couple of months ago. And here, what I like about this is that it lists 12 different risks that are among the most common cited issues with different groups. We have things like disinformation, safety and security, the black box problem, ethical concerns, bias, instability, hallucinations, unknown unknowns, job loss and social inequalities, environmental impact, industry concentration, state overreach. These are all really important aspects that we should always keep on our mind, and that's why we should never fully trust the AI. This needs to be something that we talk about. This needs to be something that we discuss with our students when we're trying to help them understand AI literacy, is to bring up these ethical aspects, to bring up things associated with bias. Say, hey, how is AI working right now? Is it any better? Is it improving? What I used to do is when I gave a presentation, I would show an AI like ChatGPT. I would say, hey, I want you to write me a short essay dealing with democracy in this country, right? And then it would give it to me. Oh, and I would also say, and I want you to use references, ABA format, and put that in there. And so it would do that. And so when I had that, I would show the audience that, and then I would also show all the problems, like, hey, this is a false reference, this is an incorrect reference, this is the problem here, right? Now when I do that, when I use the newest version of ChatGPT, or when I use a new version on Gemini, I don't get those issues anymore. In fact, here recently, I don't get any problems with the references. They're all correct, right? But I still can't fully accept the result. I have to verify. And that's something we have to be pushing to our students and for ourselves always, is that we should verify the information. We are the human in the loop. So that's a key part. So the trust issue, yes, it's going to be going down and will continue to go down because we have these improvements in its capabilities, and the hallucination rate is going down, down, down. But we should always push that, hey, we can't fully trust the AI. We should never fully trust the AI. What I like to say is that this is sort of a critical mindset that we should have, right? Where we wanted to have critical analysis always of whatever result we get. We want to look through it, verify it, make sure it's correct, make sure it's in the right voice, make sure that everything is valid, and then use that and then push it out either for an assignment or for research, whatever. We should make sure that the human is in the loop. So that's a big part of this trust issue that we want to make sure that we always keep. So it's an important point to bring up regardless. Now, the final part associated with that talks about utilization. So the use of AI. Well, here's a chart that comes from Statistica, and this one goes up to 2030. This was released in 2024, but the data goes all the way to 2023. So if we look at the statistical model of what they're projecting, we can see a ongoing increased number of use, right? So it has already greatly increased since it came out, but it's continuing to go higher and higher, which is of course exactly what it's going to do. It's going to continue to be used more and more by more people. There's another breakdown I saw where, hey, the people that are using it the most are younger generations, right? Because they're growing up with this technology. The Gen Zers, the brand new people, they see this AI and it's already integrated into their apps. It's already integrated into all the websites they go to. So it just becomes natural for them to use it. There's lots of different aspects of how they're using it, but they're the ones that are going to be using it more and more. So although we might have some resistance to it, it's going to be used even more by younger people as they continue to be in this environment that's always a part of their lives. So those are all important aspects. You can see how there's some different takes that I have. I don't think that generative AI is dying anytime soon. I do think that there's going to be more and more developments with generative AI in many different ways, such as an increase in efficiencies, the ability to use smaller models, all sorts of different things that will make it so that generative AI will keep improving for quite a bit until we move away from generative AI to something else possibly. But for the foreseeable future, I think there's going to be incremental changes in generative AI, and it'll keep getting better and better and growing. And I don't think it has any real chance of dying anytime soon because there's just so much utilization, there's so much investment, and there's so much development, and there's so much power if we can learn to use the AI effectively and properly. And that comes from you and I in academia, ensuring that we're properly teaching AI literacy to the students and the faculty as well, so that we can have the best educational experience and opportunities for everyone involved. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. Bryan Alexander, if you're watching this, I hope you liked my rebuttal, my counter argument for this. So I'm enjoying and hoping to see lots of comments so that we can continue to have this discussion, so that we can continue to go into AI and learn from one another. And remember, learning is for life. Thank you, everyone. I hope you appreciated this interesting and different type of video. Please hit that like button and please share with others so that others can develop and also be part of this community so we can learn from one another. Thank you.